Hi, everyone. It's Vince Molinaro, and welcome to the Lead the Future podcast. In these discussions, I really interview leading business leaders to get their perspective on the future, get their really understanding of how they're thinking about it, and how they have to position their companies so they can drive strategy, inspire employees, and navigate uncertainty. And in this episode, I'm really excited to have Tiffani Bova, who is the customer growth and innovation evangelist at Salesforce.com. She is also the author of a great book, Growth IQ, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And in addition, she's actually done it. She's been a business leader who has led high growth organizations and divisions, whether they're startup or Fortune 500 companies. So welcome, Tiffani, to the Lead the Future podcast. Great to see you again. And thank you for making time for this discussion.
Oh, thanks for having me, Vince. It's my pleasure.
So let's start and get right into what 2020 was. How have you coped during that time as a business leader? What was important for you to focus on to lead yourself, lead your teams through a crisis in many ways?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift for me was obviously being grounded. Much of what I do is traveling around the world, seeing clients face to face, speaking at events, meeting with leadership teams. Around kind of what are they doing to improve performance of business and build resilience, and boom, the pandemic hits and kind of everything sort of stopped and shut down. So it was really, how do we help our customers stabilize their business, and then what we had to do to stabilize our own business. It's been no rest for the weary, that's for sure, but it's been an amazing journey for sure over the last 12 months.
What have you learned this year in particular?
Well, I'd say that this has really challenged all of us to lean into the EQ side of our leadership skills, right? A lot of the soft stuff is far more important than metrics and performance and management, kind of in the normal sense. This is, how do we be more compassionate and empathetic and listen more, ask more questions, show up. We're now kind of in everybody's homes on a daily basis, so there's very little separation between work and personal life. And so how do you make sure you allow people to set those boundaries? So really creating a safe place for people to feel that they can show up to work, how they need to. And then for many people who had to educate their kids from home and do daycare from home and still work, it's really been challenging. And so I think it's been an opportunity for leaders to really show that side of their leadership style versus just leaning into the hard charge, performance metrics. So that's been super exciting to see.
Yeah, and that's been a common theme in the discussions I've had in this podcast, is that we're having to lean to that softer side more than ever. And I suspect for 2021, we're going to keep needing to do that. There's a glimmer of hope with the vaccine and other things, but my sense is it's going to continue to be a bit of a challenge. I'm curious for you, how are you thinking about growth now in light of the great ideas in your book?
Well, there's a couple of fun ones, right? Kind of the opening of my book, I talk about how the one thing about growth is it's never one thing. Okay. And that it was a study done by Bain that some 90% or so of businesses larger than 5 billion and smaller than 5 billion, that the number one reason they weren't able to build consistent and repeatable growth was internal inertia. And then at the end of that sentence, I said, this does not include a black swan event. So as soon as it happened, I reached out to my publisher and I said, can I just remove those 5 words? You know what I mean? Because it's so different to manage through kind of normal, steady state status quo and then a black swan event. And a black swan event that didn't hit just the US and kind of the financial crisis. This is a global hit, every corner of the world, every industry, everywhere, and every human being that we've really never seen before. So how do you manage your way through that? But this is really about, what do you look at, as a company and within growth, and what are the things that you need to do in order to be responsive to your customers. Now, on the second side of your question was a lot about sort of how have I changed in kind of my writing and thinking and what I do. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, that my travel schedule was the place I would collect my thoughts. events were places where I would have random, inspiring conversations with people that were doing innovative and creative things that would blow my mind. So my research has gotten a little more challenging, right? Because a lot of it was in person, at events, et cetera. My thinking and writing time was in an airplane. So I've had to try to recreate that in my work from home environment. But I absolutely miss the human side of my work, and recreating that in things like this. Like, it's great to see you, but it's not the same as sitting down and having a cup of coffee and
Right.
catching up, right? But I'm
Yeah.
glad that we at least have this as an option.
Yeah. For those of us that do this type of work, it is those interactions where you're just listening to people's stories, listening to what's working, listening to their challenges, and all those conversations kind of inform our thinking, and that is missing. What's your perspective on how does leaders need to think about this sense of growth and comfort, rarely if ever coexisting?
Yeah, and so that was a quote from Ginny Rometty, the
Yeah,
former CEO and current chairman of IBM. And
yeah,
when she said that quote, it was sort of part of a much longer quote where they had
yeah,
had 20 or 21 quarters of no growth. Sort of the largest technology company in the world, right, was not seeing growth. And so she had to make really hard decisions, divesting in certain industries, eliminating work, rethinking kind of the future of where the brand was going to be, making acquisitions, and lots of people were uncomfortable, and including clients, right? And so making those hard decisions, unfortunately, is sort of the job of a leader. Someone else I always lean into when asked this question is Whitney Johnson, who really talks about you have to self-disrupt before you can ever expect to disrupt your business or it's kind of what you're trying to do, that you have to really challenge yourself. I think what it's shown is that we're all a lot more resilient than we might have given ourselves credit for. Kind of February 2020, you might not have thought how resilient you were, and now when you look back you go, it's almost been a year. Like, we've survived through this, and in many instances we will come out the other side of this better for so many reasons. So I think that this is a lesson for everybody, that everyone is feeling the same sense of anxiety. It's what can we do to sort of work our way through it.
yeah. I completely agree with you. So as you look out over the next 3 to 5 years, what are the big issues that business leaders are going to really need to pay attention to? If you were to kind of pick the top three, what are you, and Salesforce, what are you paying attention to? What are you concerned about? Where do you see the opportunities?
Yeah, so I'd say number one is kind of health and safety of employees, right? This is all about how do we continue working, as we are today, and then leaning back in potentially to face and going back to the office. And, so many big tech companies and other companies have said, we're not going to require people to come back to the offices, till August, September, October of this year. It is a heightened level of anxiety and things going on personally and professionally. That's kind of number one. How do we enable and empower people to work from anywhere? That I think the definition of work and where work has to happen is changing. And so what does that mean to the way in which we have to provide technology, right, and tools for people to be as efficient and productive if they're not in the four walls? And then what that hybrid may look like between being in the office and, being remote from a team perspective. And then the third, just around sort of the innovation that we've got to sort of bring forward in order to solve some of the big issues that have been uncovered during this time. Weakness in supply chain, in what we've learned around environmental issues. When the world got quiet, sort of the environment woke up. We learned that we can reduce emissions and all those things. And so what does that mean for it? Even on education has needed an overhaul for a really long time. And now how do we keep educating if this is the case? So I think innovation is now going to really try to solve some big societal issues, bandwidth, access for everybody. I mean, I could go on and on, but those are kind of the three that I think are really top of mind for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree with you on all those three and the innovation part. Earlier on, there were some folks in the conversations that I was having of people saying, just want things to go back. But when you see what's possible, I go, why would we want to go back? It would be such a missed opportunity for us to reinvent how we are working, using this opportunity to take us to the next level, because that inertia that you referenced earlier is gone. There's an urgency that that we have. So I hope companies really heed your advice and are able to move forward.
When the pandemic first hit, I've shared this story a number of times, but I think it kind of brings it home for me. It was kind of April. I'm in Los Angeles, California, so we went on a hard lockdown, literally on my birthday, and it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, and I went to the local, Rite Aid around the corner from my house, and there's a Starbucks next door, and of course everything was closed except Rite Aid was open, but the parking lot was packed, so I was totally confused. So I pulled through, the lanes, and lo and behold, in the cars was people sniffing the free Wi-Fi from Starbucks. And I live in Los Angeles, California. I live in North Hollywood, sort of the epicenter of entertainment, and not everybody has access to bandwidth, right? And so it's cost, it's access, it's all kinds of things. So then if you're saying you have to work from home and educate from home and shop from home and everything, but they don't even have, high speed, what does that mean? And so, that has been something we've been trying to solve for a decade. So what's been great is how quickly we've done some of these big digital transformation projects in order to shore some of these things up. But if we're going to remain in this hybrid environment, we have to fix some of these problems. Otherwise, the gap between kind of the haves and have-nots will get wider. And that's not what we want to have come out of this, right? So that's just one example.
Yeah. And building on that, that's I think the opportunity for companies and businesses. And I know some of the work and research that Salesforce has done, and I know you've also written about this, is the role that corporations have to make the world a better place. And as companies become a dominant institution on our planet, they have a responsibility for the greater good. What are your perspectives on that?
When I was thinking about joining Salesforce, I was sort of reflective on where I wanted to go next in my career. I had been kind of on a consumption path, and I really wanted to flip to be on more of a contribution path. And so, how can I kind of give back to an industry that has been so great to me? And what can I do that makes a little bit more difference in volunteering my time, maybe for schools or, other things? And, I had attended 9 or 10 Dreamforces, which is Salesforce's big customer and industry event once a year. But that was the only tech conference, and I've attended thousands probably over the course of my career, is the only one I left. I felt like I wanted to be a better human being. So when it was ready for me to make the decision to go, there was no question that I can go somewhere where I agree with their values and the core tenets of who we are. And then to have a CEO who's like, look, business is the greatest platform for change, and our role is to be stewards of the communities and our broader shareholders and the planet. And so, it ended up being the last chapter in my book, which was sort of business is the greatest platform for change. And that sort of 10th path to growth, I didn't know what it was going to be. I actually was looking for freemium, like what was going to be the next freemium 5 to 10 years from now? Could I see what it was going to be? And then when I started working here, I went, nope, the 10th one is going to round this out of, we need to be more than have purpose over profit, right? It can't just be hardcore capitalism. Just think about what we've done for the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, you never would have had large pharma companies working together to solve something like this.
Yeah.
Which was another chapter in my book, co-opetition, right? Getting people together to solve really big problems and to open up innovation in a more collaborative way. It's been great to see companies come together for PPE equipment, for vaccinations, for daycare, whatever it might be. That sort of community spirit and greater shareholder spirit is just so powerful. And those brands that lean into this have fantastic growth rates, and so I'm a firm believer in this entire sort of philosophy of purpose over profit.
Now, for people in leadership roles, a lot of times the work you and I do, we're kind of working at the senior level, but we also, interact with leaders at the mid-level and the front line. And I'm curious, what would you say to them? How do they need to think about driving growth in 2021, 2022? How do they work with their teams and their customers? What's critical for them to think about?
So I'm going to steal something from my dear friend, Tom Peters, who is just one of my favorite humans. And he talks about management by wandering around. So now that we can't physically wander around, this is an opportunity for leaders to talk to individual contributors. Actually ask them, How's it going? What's working? What are we doing that's really stupid we shouldn't do anymore? What are we doing that's really great that we're not doing enough of? Capture that information and then be able to work it down and action it, and then say, hey, this idea came from, Sue Smith and, Bob Jones, whatever, right? And then you can say, wow, they asked me a question, they listened, they actioned it, they gave me credit, or they called me out, gave me a shout out. I feel good about my job. The fastest way to get customers to love your brand is to get employees to love their job. So if your employees love their job, that's one way. Now I'm going to do the flip of that. When it was sort of May timeframe, Mark Benioff, our CEO, gave us a challenge to have 1 million conversations with customers. Not 1 million product demos, not 1 million sales calls, not 1 million, pipeline or forecast reviews, not 1 million, 1 million conversations. And it was structured. So if you're listening to this, it doesn't matter if it's 100 conversations or 50 or 500, just take the idea. We captured it. It was fully programmatized. We watched for the signals of what customers may want, to your question, 2021, 2022, 23, 24 and beyond. We didn't say, what do you want? Because, if you ask people what they wanted, right, they'd ask for faster horses, right? A la Henry Ford, right? And Steve Jobs didn't go out and ask, what do you want? Do you want a first generation iPod, right? Which I always use when I give this example, right? You have to be listening for those jobs to be done. Sure enough, at the end of the million conversations, which ended up being 1,000,005 conversations, but we're 50,000 employees, so easier to do. We found 5 new products that we needed to launch to get people safely back to work. We reorganized parts of the business. We rearranged the product pipeline. We opened up 4,000 recs for new hires. Like, all of that came from 1 million conversations. So the answer to that question lies with your employees and your customers, but you have to ask them. And then if you ask them and do nothing with it, shame on you. Leaders are at a fork in the road. You're either going to go back to the status quo, which we just talked about, like, let's get back to normal. Why would you want to do that? Or do you want to think about the art of the possible? So to ask those questions, to capture it, to look for those signals and patterns, to then go back out and say, would this kind of product help you? And really do that. And then get back to your employees. What do your employees need during this time? And we've done a ton of stuff for our employees as well.
Such a great example. And what I love about that is, while like Salesforce has done it organizational wide, given the challenge, any leader can do that, right? I can spend more time connecting with my team, more time connecting with customers, and just having conversations. How can I better support my team? How can I better support my customers? That's a highly scalable idea, which I love, and very practical.
Yeah, what I say on the flip side of that, and I give this example in the book, is like, don't be the boss that you see on Undercover Boss in the US. They spend the first sort of 5 minutes of the show Undercover Boss, if you've ever watched it, right? Putting makeup and hair to disguise the boss, to disguise the leader, right? And I'm like, I don't know why they waste such expensive TV time putting hair and makeup on someone, because no one would recognize them anyway, because they never leave their office.
Right.
The fact they don't know these things about their business means they do not manage by wandering around, right? The CEO of Costco, well into his retirement age, right? He was on the floor of a Costco somewhere in the country 5 or 6 days a week, talking to customers, talking to his people. And how does Costco grow? Really, really well, right? Do the employees love working there? They absolutely do. Do they do everything right? That's not the point. The point is that you have to get out and have those conversations, right?
Yeah, it's not the point. Yeah, it's a great way of thinking about Undercover Boss. I have a similar view around 360 feedback. It's sort of like, you're going to hire someone to go around and interview or do a survey. Just ask. Just develop the relationships where people feel enough trust in you to say, hey, Vince, you completely missed the boat in that last meeting. Oh, thank you for that. Right? It's some of these practices are just get direct. Don't put on the makeup. Just how do you not know these things? So great perspective. So last question, and it really is, this has been a tough year for everybody, but I'm particularly thinking about young people just starting out their careers. What perspectives do you have that they might find valuable at this time?
Well, I usually answer this question by saying, trust the process. I can say in my 20s, I was kind of doing a lot of little things, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. In my 30s, it was about, capturing sort of more capability, more skills, more responsibility, bigger title, bigger income, all of that. It was sort of like I was really engineering towards, I thought I wanted to be a CEO, and I burnt out during that time.
Mm.
And then in my 40s, I said I kind of needed to pull back and figure out, what do I want to do? And so once I found my voice and I found my superpower, I doubled down on that. And that really led me here. And so each phase of my career, now what's different is many sort of people starting their career may accelerate through that 25-year journey much quicker than I did, right? Sort of what is your superpower? What is the things that you're really good at? And how can you get, paid to do it? And really, what's your goal? And you may not know every answer, because trust me, I never knew I'd be standing here, in my 50s, talking events, having written a bestseller, doing this, doing that, right? That's never was in my plan, right? And so you never know. So that's that kind of trust the process. The other thing I'd say on the flip of that is this is not normal. What we're going through right now. And so fortunately, they've not experienced sort of what it was. And so they have the ability to have no preconceptions and bad habits. So now it's, how can we actually make it better? What doesn't work and how can you fix? In the last US financial crisis, many of the tools we now use in business to keep everything going was founded during that time. So what's going to be founded today? What are you going to do today? What business will you start today? What idea will you be as an entrepreneur in your company today that will solve another big problem 5 to 10 years from now? And I think that they're so digitally enabled, right? They are digital first. They don't even know what this is at all, right? And so, I think that I'm excited to see how they tackle some of these big problems without the guardrails that have been put on so many of us over the course of our careers. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm inspired by your words, so I'm sure a lot of young people will as well. So, Tiffani, thank you so much for making time. As always, just such amazing ideas, such a wonderful energy. Your work is having so much impact around the world, and I always love, the privilege of speaking to individuals who are the real deal, right? You read their book, you meet them, and you kind of go, my goodness, what an amazing individual. And you are clearly one of those. So thank you for being who you are. Keep, changing the world for the better. And thank you so much for taking time to be with us on the Lead the Future podcast.
Oh, Vince, I'm grateful for you and all your support. And thanks to everybody for listening. And I appreciate the opportunity to join everybody here today. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.